Chapter 7. Yolanda bounded into the classroom, but Delia hesitated a moment outside the door of her English class. The Tollivers, even though they said very little, seemed to dominate the spirit of every class she shared with them. Delia took a deep breath, walked in, and headed to the cluster of chairs where her group sat. The class had been divided for something Miss Benson called cooperative learning groups. Delia figured it was something her teacher had learned in a college education class, but Delia liked working in groups because it was easy to hide her problem. They had been allowed to pick their own group members, but sometimes Miss Benson assigned people so the kids wouldn't always work with their friends. Delia figured Miss Benson let them pick their own for this project so she wouldn't have to deal with the Tollivers. Nobody had chosen them to be in their group, which seemed to please everybody. They worked together in the back of the room, talking to each other with their books closed. They acted as if the rest of the class did not exist. Miss Benson walked around to each group, offering suggestions and comments, sometimes making little jokes. When she got to the Tollivers, she simply said, "The group project reports are due next week." They ignored her as if she were an insect buzzing near them. She walked over to Delia's group, which included Randy, Yolanda, and Jessie. "Now, how's it going here?" she asked cheerfully. "Any problems?" Delia had watched the video of Lord of the Flies after she got home from double dutch practice, so she basically knew the story. But she also knew from experience that movie makers often changed characters and even major events in a book just to make the movie more interesting. So she listened carefully to the other students in the group, comparing what she had heard about the first few chapters they had read with what she had seen in the video at home. So far, they seemed pretty similar. "So you got a bunch of school boards stranded on a desert island. How fake is that?" Randy was asking. "There's no such thing as a desert island anymore. There's people everywhere on this planet." "This book was written a long time ago," Yolanda said. "Back then there were lots of available islands. My grandfather discovered the last desert island, you know. It was just before I was born on one of his explorations of the Pacific Ocean." "Here she goes again, Miss Benson," Randy complained with a laugh. Miss Benson wisely chose not to deal with the tale of Yolanda's grandfather. Instead, she asked, "Jessie, do you think that boys that age, 9, 10, 11, could survive without adults?" Jessie shifted in his seat. "I doubt it. I've got a little brother who's 9, and I think his brain cells are made out of oatmeal. He got lost in the mall last week. But then, if the desert island had a food court and a McDonald's, maybe he'd survive. That's how he found his way out of the mall." "I don't think this island had food courts," Randy said, laughing. "I read the whole book already. These kids were into more gruesome stuff, like killing and eating pigs." "What would you do if you were all alone, Randy?" Delia asked quietly. The smile faded from Randy's face. "I'd do just fine," he said quickly. "I know how to take care of myself." He turned his attention to his book bag on the floor and began rummaging through it. "I'd be scared," Delia admitted. "My mom gets on my nerves sometimes, but I need her." "All I need to survive is electricity for my hair curlers and television and stereo and a bag of money, and I'd be just fine," Yolanda asserted, while grinning at Jessie. "When we lived in London, I lived alone for 6 months while my parents worked as missionaries in the outback of Australia. I was the same age as the kids in this book." "For real?" asked Jessie, who was new enough not to know about Yolanda's history of colorful storytelling. "Yeah, for real," she replied with a look of innocence on her face. "And I did not become a savage like the kids in this story. Civilized folks don't do that." "Yolanda, you think civilized means hot tubs and helicopters. Civilized has something to do with how folks treat each other. Right, Miss Benson?" Randy asked. Miss Benson smiled with relief that at least one student seemed to be getting the idea. "Good point, Randy," she said with encouragement. Randy nodded at the teacher, then turned back to Yolanda to blast her. "Besides, Yo-Yo, you've never even been to London, and you ain't got sense enough to live alone." Yolanda ignored him and got her mirror and lipstick and brush out of her book bag. "You gotta watch Yo-Yo," he told Jessie. "Believe only half of what she says. Maybe even less." Jessie didn't seem to care, Delia thought. He was busy watching Yolanda brush her long black hair. Miss Benson tried to redirect their discussion. "Without adults," she began, "the children in this book turn to fear and violence. Jack and his hunters take over." "See, Yolanda," Randy said gleefully, "one of these days you're going to go too far. Going to have us all hunting each other." Yolanda turned her chair so her back faced Randy. She had pretended not to even hear him. Jessie laughed and looked at Yolanda with eyes of admiration. Delia said nothing but listened carefully and remembered everything. Jessie announced with authority, "Seems to me that things got really bad for them because they couldn't figure out what was true and what was just a nightmare. Bunch of little kids running around so scared. They got things really messed up. Seems dumb to me. Miss Benson sighed and tried once more to get the group back on track. Here's an idea for your group project, she suggested. Why don't you do something on truth and fear? Use ideas from the novel, but make it apply to the world we live in today. Jesse raised his hand. Miss Benson, I know what we can do. How about if we do a skit on modern-day fears and lies? Delia immediately liked Jesse's idea. It would be fun, easy, and involved no reading. And I'll draw a poster to go along with it, she volunteered. And I'll do one on lies, Yolanda said with a grin. Good choice, Randy teased. This sounds wonderful, Miss Benson said. Get busy. She moved on to the next group, who wanted to make their project a quiz show using questions about the book, and the next group who wanted to bring squirt guns to the class to demonstrate violence. That one she rejected, loudly and emphatically. Delia noticed that she never did get back to the Tollivers to ask them what type of project they would do.